Most especially, we wish to say thank you to the presenting sponsors of AIDS Watch, the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, who have now been the presenting sponsors for the last many years. We really love you all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming here every year, for going to Hill meetings, for particularly reaching out across the aisle. We appreciate that, and thank you for making this such an important part of your work and that of the foundation. And now, I'd like to welcome to the podium the first Managing Director of the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, Joel Goldman, who, in keeping with Elizabeth Taylor and her family's wishes, has worked so hard to ensure that we continue to respond forcefully to end the HIV epidemic. Joel.
Thank you. We are, aside from sponsoring AIDS Watch, it's really important for us to recognize leaders that have, leaders in the legislatures that have who have been leaders in this movement. And this year we just, usually we do people in the U.S. Congress, but we thought since they were on recess, this was a great chance for us to look at some leadership from the state levels, from different time period. And so I'm really happy to introduce three of Elizabeth Taylor's grandchildren who are going to present the awards. And you know, in past you've seen them here before, but just in case you don't know them yet, you all will come up. And as they're coming up, I just want to say, like, what's great about them is they do the work. They're at the conferences. They go, and not just here, but all throughout the year. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. We are so honored to be here to take part in the 25th anniversary of AIDS Watch. Our grandmother advocated for the protection, health care, and treatment for people living with HIV since the beginning of the epidemic, and did everything she could to raise funds to find a cure. But she most certainly didn't do it alone. She worked side by side with other advocates, like everyone in this room, and with our government officials to pass key policies to help those living with HIV and prevent new infections. Before we all walk in her footsteps tomorrow, heading out to the Hill, tonight we are thrilled to recognize two legislators who are leading their local government to support HIV and AIDS community. Previous recipients of the Elizabeth Taylor Legislative Leadership Award include Congresswoman Ileana Rawson-Lehtinen and Representative Barbara Lee. Tonight, we are thankful for the opportunity to honor the first elected official in the United States to disclose his HIV-positive status. He has fought for housing for people living with HIV and AIDS in New York, authored what was Local Law 47, which established the HIV and AIDS Service Administration, and is currently a member of Governor Andrew Cuomo's AIDS Advisory Council. Please welcome former New York State Senator Thomas Dwayne to accept the Elizabeth Taylor Legislative Leadership Award.
Hi. I didn't have index cards, but I'm not going to do the whole thing unless everyone doesn't sort of quiet down. I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for the honorees after me. So, everyone take a deep breath because we need to, please, listen. This is what, you don't want me to go all viral on you, which I've been known to do. I am just completely, this is like a thrill of a lifetime. I think I was gifted with an extra well of compassion, and I think that that is what drove my passion. And I didn't create it myself, it just came as part of me, and I'm very grateful for it. And I'm so grateful for this award, and Elizabeth Taylor is just the most amazing person. No one else would step up, and she stepped up. She changed the world for people who had AIDS, when people were dying of AIDS, and just stuck with us all the way through. And she's just a heroine for people with AIDS worldwide. I want to thank Bruce Pachter, who, I used to have a posse when I was in office, because I had a big appetite for saving the world, but I don't have a posse anymore. I only have Bruce, and he's wonderful, and thank you, because he's got lots on his plate, and he's been great professionally and spiritually and personally for me. Thank you, Bruce. And also, my nephew and his wife are here, and my nephew James is probably the absolutely nicest heterosexual cis man in the universe. He's such a good guy, and he's worked on many political campaigns and kept doing it even when they lost, and he'd go back for more, and sometimes they won, and now he's still in public service. And his spouse and life partner, Una Jacobson, who has dedicated, who's an emigre to the United States, and instead of going for the yes, please, because it's about Una Jacobson, everybody. Hello, Una, raise your hand. Thank you. And she's next to that really nice straight guy, but not narrow. And she could have gone for like the materialistic American dream, but no, that's not what she did. She uses her skills to make the world a better place for everyone, specifically just recently for women around the world, and now using her skills in communication, and she's amazing. And they're here even though they left their 2-year-old daughter in the car seat with the motor running. The windows are down, so it's okay. And they have a dog who's just beautiful but is very ill right now, so I'm very thankful that you're here. It's a sin to say good things about yourself when you're raised a Roman Catholic, so I'd be very careful here. And I want to say, a lot of the legislation that I passed didn't have my name on it, because the Republicans in the New York State Senate didn't like to have Democrats as sponsors of legislation. But if you asked anybody who was the sponsor of the hate crimes legislation or the gay rights bill or, whatever, they would say Tom DeWay, but my name wasn't on the bill. And the reason I say that is, it's the person and the people who fight the hardest who are the ones who get recognized among those who are being helped. And also, before I was elected to office, I'm not going to go into great detail, but when in New York City we have rent regulation, and when the life partners lived together in an apartment, and the one whose name was on the lease passed away, the survivor had no rights at all. Like, the family could come in and take everything out of the apartment, and the marshal would be there putting up an eviction notice. And I wasn't in office then. With one other attorney, we went to work, and everyone said, even the gay legal groups, "Oh, you don't have a chance. They'll never recognize us as family." And you know what? We won. And it's amazing, because you don't have to get married to be family. We are family if we say we're family. If we put ourselves out as family, we are family. I mean, marriage is nice and the kids wanted it, but we make our own families. And I think I should I'll not even go on and talk about fighting with Bloomberg, etc. I did beat him with every HIV bill he tried to pass in the legislature, and they said, I'm not going to get it past Tom DeWay, and he learned his lesson. But I served as on the corrections committee. And New York State had 70 correctional facilities. And two things I want to say about that. One is I got a law passed that that made it so that the New York State Department of Health supervised health care in correctional facilities for infectious diseases, HIV, tuberculosis, Hep C. The Department of Health regulates everything: hospitals, doctors' offices, everything, but not prisons and jails. They police themselves. And I got the health department in there to make sure that people who are incarcerated got the best, most updated care, and I am incredibly proud of that. And finally, there's a radical woman who's incarcerated, whose story is amazing, named Judy Clark, and I visited her, and it was a women's prison, and she ran the babies program for the women who were incarcerated when they were pregnant. In New York, they would handcuff women to gurneys when they gave birth, but we were able to change that. The Democrats changed that. Can you imagine? But anyway, she's incarcerated, and she does the training the animals to help with service members. Like the correction officer would come to her and she would say, you should do this for this person, this for this person. She was running the place. And I said to her, Judy, how do you do this? I mean, she's been in jail for more than 30 years. And she turned to me and she said, Tom, even here, the work goes on. And so I just want to say for all of us, because you're here, because you know this, as activists, like I'm getting an award from activists for being an activist. How great is that? You don't need anything but passion to get things done, because we are going to continue to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Thomas Dwayne. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My family and I are so grateful for your work. Next, we would like to recognize a representative from the Florida House of Representatives, Carlos Guillermo Smith. Representative Smith proudly identifies as an LGBTQ, Latino, and forward-thinking millennial feminist who reflects the values and diversity of Florida. His most recent accomplishment, securing PrEP coverage for all Publix employees in Florida, was a huge win for HIV prevention. Representative Smith knew how important access to PrEP is, and met with Publix officials and organized public pressure alongside other advocates to educate Publix officials on this critical preventative medicine. He has also defeated a dangerous Constitutional Review Commission proposal that would have undermined LGBTQ HROs across the state of Florida, and continues to fight unapologetically for a statewide non-discrimination policy. Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, please accept the Elizabeth Taylor Legislative Leadership Award.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much for those really amazing words about the advocacy that we're all doing right now. I really want to thank the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation for this incredible honor. She was telling the story about how we all found out when TheBody.com, which does incredible reporting, about how Publix supermarkets was denying access to PrEP for their employees. I want to kind of give you some background on what that was like in Florida, because Florida, which is where Publix supermarkets is headquartered, remains #1 in the nation for new HIV transmissions. Publix supermarkets is one of the largest private employers in the South, as well as in my state of Florida. And what they do, and sometimes what they don't do, sets the bar for others in the private sector. And when I first heard that they were denying PrEP coverage for their employees, I was personally offended as someone who was on PrEP for a very long time myself, and I was never afraid to talk about it. Because as an advocate, And as a lawmaker, as a queer Latinx person who understands the intersectionality of HIV's impact on my respective communities, I have always understood the responsibility that I have to tell my truth, to help educate the public, to break the stigma, as we say so often, and to break down the barriers that remain that prevent us from completely eradicating this epidemic. I didn't know if Publix's decision to deny PrEP to their employees was based on cost, if it was based on some absurd moral objection to the medication, or whether it was some combination of both. But I didn't really care. My role was to use my position as a lawmaker to invite myself to the table, to seat myself at that table, and to start a conversation. And as we know, I think that there's any number of reasons for why someone in consultation with their doctor may decide that their personal HIV prevention strategy is to begin a PrEP regimen. Maybe my partner was living with HIV but had a detectable viral load. Maybe I was just following the CDC's recommendation for someone who was at high risk. But then Publix told me that just like with any other medication, they would consider an exception to offering PrEP if their employee could demonstrate a medical necessity for the medicine. And I wondered, how would that work exactly? Would the doctor need to explain the medical necessity in detail to their patient's employer, Publix, before they approved the request? How would they do that without violating HIPAA laws? And of course, I think the most important question of all that I asked myself was, how is any of this any of Publix's fucking business? It was not their business, and it still is not their business. And I can promise you that Publix never really seriously contemplated any of these thorny questions before the body reported their rejection of PrEP. And at the end of the day, because of you all, just the right amount of pressure from the community, from advocates, you all helped create the environment where they were finally ready to listen. They were finally ready to acknowledge that they didn't know what they didn't know about HIV and PrEP. And so I posted the results of my meeting with Publix on Twitter, along with my many unanswered questions about what they were going to do about this now that this was on their lap, and they publicly announced their decision to reverse course and offer PrEP to their employees in reply to my tweet, so that everyone could see. And that was how we got it done. And I say we intentionally because that was all of us. It was the right combination as advocates. It was the right combination of carrot and stick to encourage them to do the right thing. All of us, we were all working in our own advocacy lane in our own way, but we were working together. Some of us were making noise, some of us were educating them behind the scenes, and every single person who had that role as an advocate was equally as important as the other. And then we achieved the end result. So I want to close by just saying, you know, during all this drama with Publix, we educated the actual public and a heck of a lot of business leaders who for the first time found out what the HIV prevention pill actually is. I think that that's progress. We did it together, and we still have a lot more work to do. So thank you all for doing what you're doing. Let's all keep doing that together, and I think we'll finally be able to eradicate the epidemic of HIV. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for this great honor.
Okay. I'm just trying to, for the health department, the video. Thank you.
Now.
I take up a lot of space. And since I know you, so
Now. The third now, right? Just a very special thank you. These are the representatives and the politicians that we need, and that we need to make sure to get out and vote for, and that we need to be able to support. And with that, big round of applause, thank you. And with that, we'd also like to take one more opportunity to acknowledge and thank Representative Brian Sims from Pennsylvania for his amazing work and contributions. Of course, we already gave him his award this morning, so you might have recalled that. But always an amazing speaker. We'd like to hand over the mic for just another moment, and again, thank him and thank everybody else this evening.
Thank you, Quinn. I want to do something that elected officials usually don't do, and that is that I want to both try to be brief, and I want to talk about all of you instead of talking about myself. There is this belief in public policy, and a belief that I share, that good public policy is about empathy. And it always sounds really high-minded when you hear a cis white guy say that, but here's what I mean. I'm going to vote on 1,000 bills this year as a legislator. And only about 50 of those have any impact on my life or have ever had an impact on my life, where I can kind of look at my own life experiences to determine how that bill would impact other people. The other 950 bills require me to put myself in somebody else's shoes. Well, that's the definition of empathy. It turns out in the United States that women are significantly, statistically more empathetic than men. No surprises to any woman in this room, right? It actually turns out to be true of most minorities when compared to the proverbial majority, that they outrank us in empathy scores. Now, I'm not talking about sympathy. I don't know if women are more sympathetic than men. Maybe they are, maybe they are not, and I'm not talking about worldwide. I've only seen data here in the US. But there is no biological component to empathy. It's the Ginger Rogers effect. It's having to do everything that everybody else did, but backward and in heels. It makes people significantly more confident. So if I believe good public policy is about empathy, and women and minorities tend to be significantly more empathetic, it would follow that the more women and the more minorities that are in state legislatures, the better that they would perform. And it turns out it's true, right? Like, we're all really proud of this, but this is true. We've got 50 little microcosms, 50 states that we can study to see if this is actually true. And I will tell you right now, the states that have the highest number of women in them, the states that have the highest number of black and brown people in them, they perform so differently from those states that do not. Look at Louisiana one day and then look at California separately. No offense, Louisiana, you've got work to do, but we want to help you with that work. So I'm so grateful to be able to stand up here with Tom. I'm so grateful to stand up here with Carlos, whose work I am so impressed by, but I promise you, we all want to come back here in the years to come and be standing with all of you. We know the solution to broken government, and that solution is black and brown people and women. So get busy fixing this broken government.
Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. That's right. Thank you everyone. Wow, what an inspiring evening it has been, and we have a few more special guests that we really want to honor for you all. I'm Nana Khanna again. I'm with the U.S. People Living with HIV Caucus. We are a network of networks and individuals of people living with HIV. And we are proud that the networks that comprise the caucus are those that are led by the constituencies we represent, right? So we are governed by people living with HIV. And we are here to be a collective voice on behalf of a diverse and strong community of people living with HIV. We invite you to join us and to be part of us. And tonight, we are exceptionally proud to be presenting a set of 3 awards to 3 incredible community leaders, all people openly living with HIV who really exemplify the best of what it means to be a leader. These are folks who collectively have decades of experience. They share their knowledge generously. They share their wisdom generously. They are humble. They lead by example. And real leaders share their resources. They share access. They share privilege, right? And so we're really, really proud to be introducing this roster of community PLHIV awardees tonight. I'm going to bring up Vice Chair of the Caucus, Barb Cardell, to introduce our first awardee.
Thank you, Nana, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. Just to let you know, I'm going to reclaim my 7 minutes from this morning. Bill McCall just had a heart attack back there. That's all right, Bill. Just breathe, it'll be fine. You know, yes, the bar's still open and everybody should get a drink because we're going to be talking about some amazing people who have done incredible work. I'm here tonight to present an award for positive leadership to Cecilia Chung, and that is why we heard her this morning on the elected officials and appointed officials panel, and I have to tell you that I could talk about her for my 7 minutes and 7 minutes and 7 minutes because she is a phenomenal leader. She is a phenomenal woman living with HIV. And when I look her up online, they're like, Cecilia Chung is a civil rights advocate. And I thought, damn straight she is. She has never left anybody behind. In her leadership and her time in San Francisco, she has done some amazing, amazing work. She's been the health commissioner and has advanced universal access for people living with HIV, but also people living with other health challenges. And I think that that is so important. When we come into a room and we make change in a way that's significant and powerful, we change the conversation for all of us. Not just for people living with HIV, not for LGBTQ folks, but for all of us. We talk about access for those of us who are normally left behind. And Cecilia has been a powerful, powerful advocate for all of us. She has also managed to lead an organization, Positively Trans, that has been the national voice for trans people living with HIV, an often underrepresented, underrecognized, underspoken about community. I just think that it is so incredible that so many positively trans folks are here tonight to support Cecilia and to make sure that that message is heard on the Hill tomorrow as well. You know, I think that we oftentimes don't think about who's not in the room until they're knocking at the door and saying, we're here, let us in. And so welcome to the Positively Trans community. We love you and we are so glad you're here to share your voice and to share celebrating Cecilia because she is amazing. Cecilia has been a voice about inclusivity and intersectionality for so many years. She was the very first chair of the PLHIV caucus, and I was her vice chair. I'm always, the vice chair, but that's okay because I'm in charge of the vice, which I can handle. I know. But anyhow, Cecilia has always made sure that communities that are often not part of the power structure, especially the white male-dominated power structure, are at the table, not on the menu, and not just at the table, but leading the committee, leading the commission, leading the budget as she shared with us today. Cecilia leads with grace and charm and so much else, and I actually promised that I wasn't going to mention the television show, but I'm going to anyways. So if you want to know more about Cecilia, there's a marvelous television show that talks about her life and how she came up. But with that, I'm going to actually yield my time to my amazing friend, my mentor, and a woman that I just am so proud to know and so honored to introduce Cecilia Chung.
And thank you, everyone. I tried to think what kind of message I can give to a room like this full of advocates. So I really can't give too much, so I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story and why I founded Positively Trans. When I came out to my parents in the early 1990s, my mom, first thing she responded was saying, "Can you dress up after your dad goes to bed?" And I say, that's totally not what authenticity and, and being honest to myself means. And because of like some other additional like conflicts that we have, I left my family and went to this place called the Tenderloin. That's where most of the transgender women, sex workers especially, and a lot of people that would be considered outcasts, to be getting together and supporting each other. That's where I called home for many, many, many years. And it was because of these outcasts, I survived the epidemic. I'm here today to talk about what I want to do to pay it forward. Had it not been for somebody who starts suggesting that I come to these conferences and speak at conferences, I would not have these opportunities here standing in front of you telling you my stories. But there's so many more stories out there. I still remember the time when my sisters died silently when I'm yelling loud and scream for inclusion. That has to change today. But we have a government that's doing exactly the opposite. So we can't do it alone, and we need all of you to step up, help us pay it forward, mentor a trans person if you know one, and more importantly, next year, please make a commitment to bring at least one trans person, especially trans person living with HIV, to this conference. Yeah. That way, we can show the world what intersection can do. Yeah. Thank you.
We'll wait for the pictures.
My phone's in down. I just punch it. Oh my god, what happened? I feel like 5% better than her. As long as I can.
I'll get yours later. It'll be better than mine.
Next up, we have Pat Kelly, who's going to be introducing our next awardee.